Pastor Doug here from Crossroads. It's great to be with you. I hope that today's message will draw you closer to Jesus.
Hey, the last couple weeks that we've been meeting together, we've been talking about how God created us to need and know one another, right? He designed us to find our people and love our neighbor. And in week 1, we looked at the story of Bartimaeus. Bartimaeus was, in the New Testament, he was blind and he was sitting by the side of the road when Jesus and a crowd walked by. And he calls out to Jesus. Jesus hears him and calls Bartimaeus over. And we learned by Bartimaeus' example of getting up and stepping toward Jesus, we learned that when we have a pain or a problem, Jesus wants to be there. And we want to be there for each other. And last week, we talked about a few things that we have in common, and we looked at loneliness. And if you were here, we discovered that you're not alone in feeling alone. Even Jesus experienced loneliness just like we do, but he gave us a command to love one another, and we love one another when we're intentional and do life with each other, investing in community and connection. So today, as we wrap up this series, Find Your People, Love Your Neighbor, I want to take the conversation out our front door and into our neighborhoods. A Pew Research Center survey explored several aspects of community life in the United States, including neighborly relationships. And I found this survey very interesting, and I picked 5 findings that I just want to talk about very briefly this morning. See if any of them pertain to you. The research found that older Americans are more likely to know their neighbors than younger ones. Makes me wonder if maybe we just become more friendly as we age, or as we age, we might need help from each other more than when we're young. I don't know. The study found that even in a digital age, neighborly interactions are still more likely to happen in person than through text or email. Maybe we don't want to give out too much personal information like our number or our email address. We would rather be face-to-face with people. Maybe we can walk away quicker when we're face-to-face. Number 3, about 2/3 of Americans who know their neighbors would trust them with their house keys. I don't know. But we might be a trusting people until we're not, right? Number 4, social events among neighbors are relatively rare. This tells me that just maybe I want to see you, but I don't necessarily want to spend a lot of time with you. Kind of interesting, right? And the last finding, rural residents are more likely to know most or all of their neighbors, but not to interact with them. It's like I'm not living in a city, I'm in a rural area, but I see you, and I'm going to keep you more on the outside than on the inside, right? Can you resonate with any of these 5 findings? And I hope you're thinking about your neighborhood right now, and if any of them fit into your demographic. And we just can't talk about being neighborly without mentioning Mr. Rogers, right? This picture is from the Heinz History Museum, and if you've ever watched Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, you will quickly see that Fred Rogers embodied a very iconic quote that was even made into a song, right? Won't you be? There you go, good job. The song became synonymous with his show and also the spirit of his message. But let's not confuse Mr. Rogers' question to be his neighbor, his invitation, and Jesus' command to be neighborly. These 2 commands are in Luke and Galatians. Luke 6, do to others as you would like them to do to you, for the whole law can be summed up in this one command, love your neighbor as yourself. These verses are emphasizing the importance of treating others with love and compassion, even if they're not so easy to love. To seek out ways to help and support our neighbors in times of need and every other day in between, because that's how we want to be treated. Now, there's a story in the Old Testament that you might not think of when you think about being neighborly to someone. It's not a passage that is right on the top of your list, but I found it so interesting for our conversation about find your people, love your neighbor. And I loved it. It's about a neighborly connection, and I think we have a lot we can learn from this story. Elisha was a prophet in the Old Testament, and he came right after another prophet, Elijah. Now, if you're like me, you might get the prophets Elijah and Elisha mixed up. So here's a free gift for you today. When I think about both prophets, I have to look at their names. Elijah has a J, Elisha has an S. So Elijah came before Elisha because J comes before S in the alphabet, right? There's a free one. Let's continue. As a prophet, Elisha traveled a lot, and his ministry took him through a small village called Shunem. And because he went there often, he knew people in the village, and he was friendly with them. They were neighborly to him, and he was neighborly right back. There's one couple in the town of Shunem who went above and beyond to be neighborly right back to Elisha. They actually added a room onto their house for him to stay in whenever he was passing through their town. Now, Elisha didn't travel alone. He had his young servant Gehazi with him. And on one trip, Elisha and Gehazi are coming through Shunem, and Elisha says to Gehazi, hey, talk to this couple and find out what they need right now. They've been so kind to me. I would like you to determine how we can bless them back. So, being a good servant, Gehazi went to the woman in the relationship, and he's like, hey, we appreciate you. What can we do for you? And the woman replied, I have everything I need right now. I really don't need anything specific right now. So Gehazi reported this back to Elisha, but he added an observation. Later, Elisha asked Gehazi, what can we do for her? Gehazi replied, she doesn't have a son, and her husband is an old man. Gehazi is rather blunt, right? But his report back to Elisha gets Elisha thinking. He's recognized the generosity of some people who he sees often and have provided for him. He knows the husband is old. He knows the woman is longing for a child, and he wants to repay their kindness. So he jumps on board Gehazi's observations and tells his servant, call her back again, Elisha told him. When the woman returned, Elisha said to her as she stood in the doorway, next year, at this time, you will be holding a son in your arms. No, my Lord, she cried. Oh, man of God, don't deceive me and get my hopes up like that. But sure enough, the woman soon became pregnant. And at that time, the following year, she had a son, just as Elisha had said. Now, I'm not saying that we take Elisha's example literally and prophesy to our neighbors that they will get pregnant and have a child. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I do think there's an awareness of this couple's situation that shows us some great ways to be neighborly. We love our neighbor when we offer them the unexpected. If 2/3 of us know our neighbors well enough to offer them our house keys, surely that connection can be fostered and it can grow. We can go deeper with them. And we love our neighbor when we offer them the unexpected. So what might this look like for you in your neighborhood? Maybe for you, when you stop at that roadside stand and pick up that quart of cherries, you also get one for your neighbor. Maybe this winter when the snow comes, it's hard to think about snow right now, but maybe you plan ahead and think about how to bless your neighbor and you take your kids and go shovel their driveway. Maybe you offer your neighbor some tools. Maybe you invite them over for burgers after they've mowed because it's hot and they could use a good meal. Whatever you sense could be an unexpected blessing, just do it. It was something very different for this sweet couple from Shunem. They were blessed with a son. Wow, Elisha is a really good neighbor, right? But the story goes on. One beautiful day, the little boy is out in the field with his dad. I can just imagine the camaraderie that's happening between son and dad. And all of a sudden, the story tells us the son has a very bad headache. And dad sends him home with a servant to be with his mom for the rest of the day. And as she's holding him in her arms, on her lap, he dies. I can hardly think of anything more difficult. A beautiful, unexpected blessing, one moment, turns into a horrible, unexpected tragedy the next. Distraught, the woman takes her son to the room where Elisha stays when he's with them, and she lays her son on his bed. And then she immediately leaves the house to go and find the prophet Elisha. She sent a message to her husband, send one of the servants and a donkey so I can hurry to the man of God and come right back. So she saddled up the donkey and said to the servant, hurry, don't slow down unless I tell you. This mom is on a mission. I don't know how fast donkeys can go, but she says, saddle up that donkey, put it in gear, because I am out of here. You see, her faith must have convinced her that Elisha could be instrumental again in doing the seemingly impossible. He had already spoken a miracle of life over her before. He told her she would have a son. So perhaps she thought once again he could offer hope and give life to her little boy. We always need hope. We love our neighbor when we give them hope. Hope is a beautiful thing. And when we care about someone, we make it a priority to share hope with them over and over and over again. When we love our neighbor, we give them hope, always, always hope. Hope for better days, hope in the face of disaster, of conflict, hope that God will make sense of the senseless one day. We love our neighbor when we give them hope. This Shunammite mom is holding on to hope. She's riding her donkey, racing to meet Elisha. Elisha sees her coming, is wondering what's wrong, and he sends Gehazi ahead to intercept her, to find out what's wrong. Gehazi gets to this mom, and for some reason that we'll find out soon, the woman goes around Gehazi to get to Elisha as fast as she can. But when she came to the man of God at the mountain, she fell to the ground before him. She caught hold of his feet. Gehazi began to push her away, but the man of God, Elisha, said, leave her alone. She's deeply troubled, but the Lord has not told me what it is. Then she said, did I ask you for a son, my Lord? And didn't I say, don't deceive me and get my hopes up? This woman hasn't given Elisha many details yet, but he knows enough to know that something is really wrong in the life of his friend. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is to listen to the needs of our friends. He sends his young servant on ahead to the house to get there as quickly as possible. Elisha said to Gehazi, get ready to travel. Take my staff and go. Don't talk to anyone along the way. But the boy's mother said, as surely as the Lord lives and you yourself live, I won't go home unless you go with me. So Elisha returned with her. Sometimes the most powerful way that we can love our neighbor is to be present with them. Elisha returned to this home to be present, to be there and help his neighbor. Our greatest demonstration of love might simply be our presence. In 1991, I was 8 months pregnant with our son. And the neighbor across the street had just had surgery. And one day I was in my kitchen and I heard some ruckus. I heard some noise coming from our neighbor's house. I knew that Joyce had had surgery. I knew that her husband was there with her. And I knew also that she had a friend living with her just for that short period of time. And as I looked out my front door to determine what the noise was, I saw her friend running across the street, screaming for help. I met the friend in the road between our houses, and I went along over with her into the house, and I immediately saw what was causing so much distress in these women's lives. Our neighbor's husband had been eating lunch, and he just suddenly collapsed on the kitchen floor. I told the ladies to call 911, and very pregnant, I got on the floor and started to do CPR on this gentleman. And it felt like forever, because seconds turn into hours when tragedy strikes, right? And I was so thankful when the paramedics arrived and took over the chest compressions and the rescue breaths that I had started on him. And while they worked with her husband just a few feet away, I just sat with her and held her hand. And I just tried to speak hope into her life. But more than that, right now, I just tried to be a presence, to be there for how she was feeling. Unfortunately, our neighbor was unable to be revived, and he passed away. But there were times after that Joyce just needed a neighborly touch, and Steve and I both tried to provide that for her. When we love our neighbor, we are present with them in their great time of need and present afterward. Elisha was present in this story. He returned to the home of his friends, and when he arrived, he saw the child laying on his bed. So he went into his room and shut the door behind him, and he started to pray. And then Elisha does something that he must have learned from his predecessor Elijah, because this story of what Elijah did for a widow's son who passed away is in 1 Kings 17. Check it out. What Elisha did next sounds odd to me, but it must be either an Elijah thing or an Old Testament thing or a God thing. But either way, I'm not arguing with it. It's kind of interesting. Elisha laid down on the child's body, placing his mouth on the child's mouth, his eyes on the child's eyes, and his hands on the child's hands. And as he was stretched out on him, the child's body began to grow warm again. Elisha got up, walked back and forth across the room once, and then stretched out himself again on the child. This time the boy sneezed 7 times. Isn't it interesting what the Bible records? Sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. Then Elisha summoned Gehazi. "Call the child's mother," he said. And when she came in, Elisha said, "Here, take your son." She fell at his feet and bowed before him, overwhelmed with gratitude. Then she took her son in her arms and carried him downstairs. This is amazing. And I think it's amazing on many levels. First, it's amazing because it's a flat-out, beautiful miracle from God, an undeniable miracle of God's hand at work. It's also amazing because I think Elisha and the older woman who had this child, I think both their faith grew through this trying ordeal. But it's also an amazing story because it shows us, perhaps in a unique way, a beautiful upside, a fun perk of being neighborly. When we love our neighbor, we celebrate with them. I can just imagine, right? All the years after this event, when Elisha is traveling through Shunem and he stops at the home of his neighbor, he not only gets to stay in his own private room, but he's probably added on the permanent invitation list for all this family's graduations, the wedding of the son, birthdays that come along. He is there. He has an all-inclusive pass to celebrate the things in his neighbors' lives that they invite him to join in. I love it. Crossroads, celebrating together with our neighbors is something that we do really well. Harvest celebrations, baptisms, and child dedications where families from the neighborhood come in to support their loved one. These are times, the Christmas meal, even when our neighbors see some of our sweet members embracing their younger side and going down a playground slide. These are times of great celebration. Some of my favorite memories at Crossroads are from events that we celebrate together. But before I send you off today with only warm, fuzzy, good feelings about loving our neighbors, I don't want you to be misled into thinking that it's only and always hunky-dory when we're neighborly. It's not. There are definitely times in these relationships where we need to keep our attitudes and reactions in check. There are times when our neighbors might get under our skin just a bit, and we're tempted to react in a way that could harm our relationships with them. I think about this for our neighbors who live next door, but also for the people who don't live next door, but we connect with them regularly. This happened to me with a home pest control service. Bugs creep me out. If I see a spider in the house, I don't know if I told you this story before. When I see a spider in my house, I will go to my kitchen cabinet, get the heaviest coffee mug I can find because I don't drink coffee, and I take the mug, because I'll never have to use it again, and I put it over the spider. And that's where the mug stays and the spider stays until Steve gets home from work, and then he can deal with it. And besides spiders, it's only one other insect that sends a chill up my spine, causes me to sweat, I taste a little bit of throw up in my mouth, and I get really freaked out. I run in the opposite direction when I see this. Ugh. I can't even look at the picture there or there. It's the thousand-legger. The thousand-legger is my all-time nemesis. I can't handle it. In fact, knowing that that picture is there and there right now, I'm getting a little sweaty. So, Lily, would you just do me the kindness? I know you're on slides today, babe. Would you just do me the kindness and look for any other slide possible and just put it up there? Can you find one that would help me as I'm talking about my attitudes and reactions? Lily, I love you. Well done. Here's my story. It was first thing in the morning about a year ago, and I had gotten out of bed, and I'm washing my face at our bathroom sink. When I'm done washing my face, I grab my towel, and I begin to dab my face dry. Yeah. As I'm dabbing my face dry, no lie, I feel something scurry right across the top of my lip. I am not making this up. This actually happened. Something scurried right there. I pulled the towel away from my face and saw a huge thousand-legger just drop right in my bathroom sink. I freaked out. In fact, my Apple Watch at that exact minute said, "Sensing activity, keep moving. Sensing activity, keep moving." Oh my goodness, why? Why was this thousand-legger in my bath towel? We regularly pay really good money to have a pest control service come and help that not to happen. A voice in my head was telling me at 7 a.m., call them immediately and insist that they come to our house immediately to put up more bait traps immediately so that this doesn't ever happen again. Have I said I wanted it done immediately? But after a few deep, calming breaths, I had to get some perspective and be rational, because I would not have been very loving toward my neighborly technician if I did what I wanted to do right in that moment. I wouldn't represent love your neighbor well at all if I acted immediately. Instead, I determined I would tell them about this horrific experience the next time they were at our house for a treatment. And I probably went downstairs right that minute to my fridge and got a Reese's peanut butter cup because they make everything better. Friends, our posture toward our neighbor extends out our front door, yes. But it also is meant for those that are closest to us in our neighborhood, but also how we treat and respond to people in our community, in our town, and even beyond. Let me close this series, Find Your People, Love Your Neighbor, with just one more scripture. On more than one occasion, the Pharisees gave Jesus space for him to tell us some really important things. One such time was in Matthew 22. The Pharisee asked Jesus, "Teacher, which is the most important commandment in the law of Moses?" Jesus replied, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. A second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself." The entire law and all the demands of the prophets are based on these two commandments. Love your neighbor as yourself. Crossroads, I hope you will take this summer to creatively think about ways that you can find your people and love your neighbor. Whatever that looks like for you, have fun with it. But take a moment before you leave. Think about who your neighbor is, what they might need, and then respond via the connection card. Will you love your neighbor by offering them the unexpected, by giving them hope, when you're present with them, or celebrating with them?
Thanks again for listening. Any step you take towards Jesus is a step in the right direction. You can find out more about us at crbic.org. That's crbic.org.